Well, good morning. We are here at the MSU Libraries talking with Chief Justice Frank Williams, who, along with his wife Virginia, donated the Lincolniana collection to Mississippi State University in 2017. I'm Susannah Ural. I am the Williams Chair here at Mississippi State, and my job is to help promote and engage the public and scholars, students, educators with this incredible collection and make sure they're accessing and learning from it. So our goal today is to talk about a couple of just favorite items, or maybe items that we'd love the public to know a little more about,
Sure.
right? And one of the first is, at least right now, we change up the galleries, but at least right now when you walk into the gallery, one of the biggest sculptures you see is really two variations of John Rogers' Council of War. And I'd love, for you to talk a little bit about this, kind of the history behind it, and maybe how you acquired them and why.
Sure. Well, we got to love John Rogers because he was the real first group sculptor of Civil War pieces.
Right.
And there's one, the slave trade, that's an early version of what he did first. So the Council of War was in that series. And first he did one piece with Stanton, Secretary of War, clearing his glasses behind Abraham Lincoln's head. That didn't go over well with the public. But
Why?
well, because it looked threatening to them, and there was talk of, and really fake news, that Stanton was somehow involved in the assassination.
Okay, so
Because
this
he took control of the government after Lincoln was shot.
Right.
And so he changed it to a location of cleaning the glasses over the shoulder. That was type B. And type C was where he has the glasses down by his side.
Okay.
So the collection has all three types, except one of them is still at home, ready to come here to complete the trilogy.
All right.
But they are very good likenesses of Lincoln.
Right.
So says Robert Lincoln, the eldest son of Lincoln, and of Stanton and General Grant.
And so it was done in 1868. Is he doing this in part because Grant, is going to be running for the presidency? Is he trying to remind the public of kind of the triumvirate that won the Civil War, do you think? Or maybe not? Maybe they're just famous.
I think really it's artistically. It's the trilogy who really ran the war administration. Okay. Lincoln as president, General Grant as commander of the Union armies, and Secretary of War Stanton.
Yeah, they're great pieces. Tell me about, there's also in the collection a piece of Abraham Lincoln's nightshirt. So it has this kind of the sleeve, a quarter of the bodice, and part of the collar. Tell the viewers about this piece maybe and how you got it.
Well, I think a collector's just offered it to us in the 80s, and we bought it in a very small amount because we had really no idea of the provenance.
Right.
But a graduate student here at Mississippi State did the research, what we should have done, and really authenticating, I think, the nightshirt belonging to Abraham Lincoln.
Okay.
And it came from Mary Lincoln, the widow, and I think it's worthy of people looking at a piece of fabric that belonged to the president.
Absolutely. I think it's very popular. I mean, it's one of those pieces where visitors often stop and spend a great deal of time, I think, because it was so kind of close to Lincoln.
Right.
Yeah. It's a good one. Next up, I want to talk about the presentation copy of the Emancipation Proclamation from the free people of color of New Orleans. What can you tell us about that piece?
Well, it came to us from a dealer in Chicago, Ralph Newman, who was known for his talent for uncovering Abraham Lincoln items. And I think we were infatuated by this because it was a resolution from the free blacks in New Orleans and how much they thought of the president.
Right.
And that's why the case is gilded with silver.
Right.
Needs to be clean right now, but other than that, I think it's authentic.
Yeah.
And I think it houses their resolutions.
Yes.
And is an evidence of how much they respected the commander-in-chief and the president who gave them emancipation, as well as pushing for the 13th Amendment.
Right. And it's a great piece, I think. I use it when I talk about the process of emancipation, right, as historians call it, that it wasn't this light switch moment on January 1st, 1863, and suddenly everyone's free who had been enslaved.
And you're right, you're absolutely right, Susannah, to point out that there were just a lot of acts when war happens, because Lincoln thought slavery, although he was against its expansion, would last until 2000 or 1900.
1900, right, yeah.
And then it would be an ultimate extinction, to quote him. But war changes things, and you get confiscation acts, 2 of them from the Congress. You get the Emancipation Proclamation, the preliminary in September of 1862, and the final in January 1, 1863.
Right.
As you point out, Lincoln's pushing for final freedom,
Right.
the 13th Amendment, before the term even expired of the Congress, as well as himself for the second term, and all kinds of things like the Civil War amendments, the 14th and 15th, the Civil Rights Act of 1866, all of that came together.
Right.
Unfortunately, we had the tools,
Yeah.
but not the wherewithal or the desire to make it complete freedom,
Right. Right.
with civil rights to go with the
Right.
freedom.
And I think that's what the free people of color of New Orleans, if you look at, remember, 2 of these gentlemen visit Lincoln at the White House in the spring of '64 to make the case that when Louisiana rejoins the Union, it should rejoin with black male suffrage. And it's almost like the free people of color of New Orleans are trying to work with Lincoln to make this happen, right? And so they're each playing their role in
Right.
that emancipation
Right,
process.
and Lincoln thought a great deal of Louisiana because it became a test case,
Exactly.
not only for the use of U.S. colored troops, which were famous for the 200,000 that served, but a raison d'etre for Lincoln to be more concerned about their welfare,
Right.
their widows' welfare. But the whole idea of expanding democracy, freedom to African Americans was all part of that plan.
Right, right. Now there's another piece in the collection that's a small pocket edition of the Emancipation Proclamation. Could you talk a little bit about that one so that when visitors come, they know to look for that item too?
It's one of our favorite pieces. It cost a lot because it's paper, and paper that's folded into a pamphlet. And it went to the Union troops and Navy people as well after Lincoln signed on January 1, 1863, the final proclamation. And that was to let the troops know what the policy of the government was
Right.
regarding emancipation, freedom, and that it would be enforced as the Union troops and the Navy went into occupied territories.
Got it. Right.
Because the Constitution still protected slavery until the 13th Amendment outlawed it.
Right.
But it was part of the package,
Right. Right.
so to speak.
So those, I think, are going to be two items that if people are curious about emancipation, take a look at both
Right.
of those. What about, there's several volumes in the collection, in the Williams collection of Lincolniana, that feature the writings of Nicolay and Hay, Lincoln's secretaries. Could you talk about that?
Well,
Those-
the Nicolay and Hay, John Nicolay and John Hay were Lincoln's private secretaries. Can you just imagine a president today only having two, in Lincoln's case, a half of clerk, 2.5 really, that were secretaries answering correspondence and so on. And they wrote, Nicolay and Hay wrote a history of the administration, which is still valuable, but it's prejudicial for their president,
Got it.
and who they favored very much. And one of the, or several book collectors did these copies of the history of the administration by putting original or inserting original documents in them. That's what enhanced the value
Yeah.
of the set, the 10-volume set.
Right.
But also because books were very popular then at the turn of the 19th century, and that's how we got this.
It's incredible because it's like there's this surprise as you go through
Right,
with these original documents.
right.
Just fantastic. Now, near the Nicolay and Hay collection in the gallery, visitors can also see an edition of the Lincoln-Douglas debates that was published, right, by Lincoln, or Lincoln had it published, and this copy is signed. Can you talk a
It
little
is.
about that?
So, Abraham Lincoln was very proud of his debates in 1858 with his political nemesis, Stephen A. Douglas,
Right.
who was the incumbent U.S. Senator from Illinois. And although Lincoln won the popular vote by about 5,000, he lost the election because the 5,000 couldn't be used in those districts where he needed the votes.
Right.
They were already
Right.
counted for him. So he sent the manuscript, which he saved from the Chicago Tribune, to Follett Forster, the publishing house in Columbus, Ohio,
Okay.
and had it printed. Proud of his speaking skills, and had about 38,000 copies made.
Right.
And this is one of those copies. And it's signed by Lincoln. And one just went for auction in 2023 for a lot more money than we paid. For it.
Do you want
So-
to tell the viewers how much?
Well, it was close to 600,000.
It's incredible.
We paid maybe 1,500 for the item.
It's quite the gift.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure. Glad to do it.
Now, when visitors walk in, one of the largest items in the gallery is the Lincoln desk. And they often, people often want to touch it, almost like you can touch Lincoln, right? And we're always like, don't touch the desk. But tell us a little bit about it and
Right.
how you got it.
Well, it only by accident, because a lawyer who I think is deceased now, but lived close to Petersburg, Illinois.
Okay.
And this is a desk from the clerk's office in Petersburg where Lincoln would sit and use while he rode the circuit. Wow. And people relate to this because, as you've said, they they're becoming intimate with this traveling lawyer
Right.
that became president, and then certainly an iconic figure in our history.
That's an interesting point, that it's from earlier in his career, before he becomes so famous. And so it's almost like it's a little more approachable. It's a little more personal. I don't know. Yeah.
And I think people see that Lincoln was a person when they look at this desk, because he had the chance to ride a law circuit that was about the size of the state of Connecticut, 3 months in the spring, 3 months in the fall,
Right.
following Judge David Davis, who was the circuit judge and who also became Lincoln's campaign manager, or one of them, in Chicago at the Wigwam in 1860.
Right.
And I think the important thing is that it helped Lincoln's growth, in that people that he was representing on the circuit, as well as mending political fences as a Whig
Right.
a politician, for example, was all part of his becoming, evolving as well into this person who became our 16th president.
Absolutely. It's a gem. Now, you're a Vietnam veteran, and you have certainly studied military history all your life. By training, I'm a military historian who comes from a military family, all the men in the family.
In fact, your dad was a Vietnam
He
veteran.
was. He was indeed. So I'm always looking for items in the collection that can help us understand the military experience, the soldier experience, maybe military families. And one of the John Rogers statues portrays two men going to the rear. One is wounded, and it's, I think it's one to the rear, wounded to the rear, one more shot. Do you remember this one? Yes.
I do. And why I remember it is because of all of the Rogers pieces that relate to the Civil War. This one was presented to Abraham Lincoln by John Rogers, who wrote a note of acknowledgement and it's in the collected works of Lincoln. So we know that the president knew of John Rogers,
Right.
and what he was doing to present our sculptures as part of the Civil War legacy.
I never knew that. I knew it was popular with soldiers, but I didn't know that connection to Lincoln
Yes.
himself. Oh, that's
Right.
fantastic. Great. Thank you for taking
Sure.
time to talk about some of these items.
You're entirely welcome, and
Absolutely.
we had a pleasure, and congratulations on your being the first, I hope the last, chair for Lincoln and Civil War Studies.
Thank you. Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Frank and Virginia Williams endowed the chair for Abraham Lincoln and Civil War Studies in 2019? Is that when it started, or was it 2021?
I think so.
COVID, I think, slowed some things
Right,
down in there.
right.
I am the first Williams chair. I'm not giving it up anytime soon.
Good.
But if any, there will be other Williams chairs along the line as they kind of continue to promote this incredible collection. If you're at Mississippi State University, be sure to visit the Williams collection of Lincolniana. It's worth about $3 million, actually a little more now that we know what the Lincoln Douglas Debates book went for. And it's along with the U.S. Grant Presidential Library. I think Dr. Keenum, the president of the university, said it best, that with these two collections in the Deep South, in a state that so physically experienced the destruction of the Civil War and the revolutionary changes that war brought, Mississippi State University has really become a place that you have to visit if you're studying the Civil War, if you're writing about the Civil War, and if you truly want to understand the full spectrum of what Americans experienced in this conflict. Thank you.